A massive washout of leverage traders produces a nice over 10% correction for Bitcoin, coming off of basically a very slight, very slight, minuscule pixel new high. And the question is that it? Is it all over? Is it time to invoke the double derp gods and Bitcoin comes down rather aggressively? Well, perhaps, but in this video, I do want to present a bit of a case that in the more medium term, Bitcoin is actually preparing a bit of a setup right here. So without further ado, we can just jump right into this one, starting off with actually a setup to start off this day, very similar to the setup that I presented. I think this was like a few days ago, based off of the Krown VMP indicator, using the Krown Quant automation tool to, well, backtest it. And essentially, it has fired off a higher probability for a short-term long setup right here. Just under 6-7%, as we can see, of this particular setup has produced a nice short-term upside move relative to the 2.5-hour time frame chart right here. You can also use this on the 2-hour chart as well. And if we go ahead and look at it, it did call this entry somewhere around 63,275 Bitcoin. From that entry to where we currently are at right now is up about 380, which is actually of significant interest right here, because if we go into the strategy tester and we look at the performance summary, we can see, if I remove my fucking rat face, where's my damn thing? There it is. We can see that the average winning trade for this strategy is about 3.5%. With a pretty wide array here of distribution of results, because the largest winning trade is is close to 14% actually. Usually taking for these winning trades about 23 bars on basically a 2-hour time frame chart. So quite some time. But ultimately, over the past 6 years, this one has been backtested, and the results, are generally, I would say, conducive towards a short-term upside movement. And as we can see, we've already hit the average for this within the first couple bars of this trade. This traditionally does go on for a little bit longer, and realistically, we wouldn't see profit taking until the VMP indicator gets back around 70 percentile plus. 74, actually, I believe, is the magical number on this one right now. So, it's not going to close actually on this bar unless if Bitcoin literally just fucking bulldozes its way back up towards the highs. But definitely possible here with the way that things are responding. But that brings me into my next chart right here. Actually, before we get into it, I should let you know, because we have started a soft sale for this one, we're offering 35% off of the Krown Quant automation features, which includes both this indicator and the script in the background to backtest basically any strategy that you want to mull over, and access to all sorts of other cool stuff as well. And that is 35% off on all of the subscription for forever, as long as you're subscribed. And that's the biggest discount that we'll ever have. We just, we want to incentivize people to move over to the new venue, Teachable. And of course, it's nice having a nice little robot slave trade for you. That's right. You get to sit back, put your hands above your head, and act like the fucking boss. Or you just lose a lot of money as well, because there are significant issues. Just because you're trading with with an algo doesn't mean that you're infallible. Obviously, it's only as good as the operator. But that's why we do provide strategy templates that you can build off of, essentially. But yeah. Anyway, the reason why I say that is because I always read, it's the fucking algos that are taking this or manipulating this. Look, the algo is only as good as the creator. Plenty of bad algos out there. And I've created some pretty bad algos for myself in the testing phase. I'll tell you that. Anyways, okay. So Bitcoin yesterday, coming off of basically a retest of the prior all-time high. I wouldn't, is it a new all-time high? Yeah, by fucking ball sack here. To me, it's just a retest, basically. It's a double derp. It's a double top, and things are going to come down here because I read my TA books, and that means that it must be bearish. And, fair enough. Bitcoin did play out a pretty sizable pullback based off of yesterday's I think yesterday we were looking at the top side of the 5-day range right here. Yeah, the 78.6 level, which it did spike perfectly into, but rejected from. So when I go down here to the daily and get a little bit more granular on this data, we can see that this correction actually already did come down on yesterday's basically to the median on the HBDR right here, which is an obvious bounce point. I couldn't have told you that Bitcoin was going to come that far down. Just, it's probably going to sell off on a retest of that. We also had the pi cycle high, producing a little bit of a short-term pullback, or relative short-term pullback. But for right now, you can see that for today, the median has jumped up. The median has jumped up from 57,700 all the way up to 63,150. Just the state of the market, just a sign of the market right here. And we can see that so far Bitcoin has actually bounced off of the bottom of it. And realistically, I would say I would say that this correction is quote unquote over, and more upside is significantly more likely if we do see Bitcoin close above the top side of this range high right here today, which is just above 66,000 bucks. Let's call it 66,200. Again, that in alignment with this setup over here, does Bitcoin have a decent probability to test somewhere around there? I mean, we're already around the average of this setup. So, what's another few $100? Of course, it has to be judged by the end of the day. But if Bitcoin does close above, I would say, hey, this is just a very quick washout and upside resumes rather quickly. Personally speaking, I do think that long term would actually not be as good as Bitcoin spending some time going sideways and down actually here. But if Bitcoin does fail this region today, or as long as it's living below about 66,100, I would be very much open to a further correction over the next few weeks as Bitcoin puts in time going sideways between 66 high and let's say like 56 low. Even a spike down there is completely fine as far as a long-term trajectory goes. I mean, Bitcoin has higher lows the whole way through. Right now, it's as long as it's above 52,000 bucks, so a higher low above like 56. Fine. Let's see what the fibs say right here. We do see that, the 618 golden pocket would be coming in right around 57. So I'm kind of close to that 56 number. I was just doing that by a bit of an eyeball. But ultimately, it really depends where today's daily close. Bitcoin closes above 66,200, let's say. I really don't have a reason not to be bullish looking for this to continue, even as crazy as that does sound. I want to take this case just one step further. We can go over here and recognize daily stochastic momentum. Yes, it's in the critical zone right here. Yes, it's creating divergence as it is right now. But if you do see Bitcoin actually close above 66,400, it will flip back onto the upside. And my rule with stochastic momentum being in the critical zone like this, just basically anywhere above this dotted line right here, is that it's a harbinger of things to come. It's going to be very difficult to keep that momentum up, especially as it does create divergences here, in this region. But it's not playable in my experience until you see it actually come down and close below this critical zone. As I make a little like chode. But my point, Bitcoin's already at 66. What the fuck? Can't record these videos fast enough, man. Anyways, my point is that these pivots kind of work hand in hand. Yes, this one's a little bit above where we spoke about here on the daily HPDR. So maybe it's a bit of a buffer zone, but ultimately, if we do see Bitcoin really close above, especially this pivot at 664. Rally continues in the short term. If it fails and you start to see this come down below the critical zone with tomorrow's open, okay, I'd be very, very biased towards a sideways and downside correction throughout the next few weeks, probably as it cools off. We see volatility cool off right now as well, after hitting extreme highs. Also on the side of potential continuation for right now is, 6-hour time frame has hidden bullish divergence on what would be a higher low right here compared to the last couple lows around 61,000 bucks on this time frame. A 6-hour time frame, looking at a 6-hour time frame for realistically a daily correction is not the wisest decision of all time. But I do just want to show that, especially if we put this on a line chart, I mean, that doesn't look that crazy as of right now. So I'd be very cognizant that, yes, as long as Bitcoin is below, let's call it like, let's call it 664. I do think it's better to go with the more conservative of those numbers. Corrections are inbound. With potential all the way down to like 56, 57, completely fine. As long as Bitcoin's above 57, I would say on a closing basis. But if Bitcoin starts to close back above there today, by today's daily closure, kind of has to be bullish, at least in my opinion. I've been seeing this go around a lot as well, and there's certainly some validity. I mean, it's not there is some validity to it. There is literally validity to it. It's like a lot of people saying around the internet, and I don't want to repeat what other people say too much because I want my content to be like fresh and unique and just different as much as it can be. I understand that a lot of people do copy me as well, but whatever. It's kind of a nice thing, actually, is that anytime that Bitcoin's retested prior all-time high after, a few years of being away from it, it puts in a correction. Let's measure out those corrections. I haven't seen anyone do that. Everyone's really averse to doing very simplistic math, but, we see this one over here, December 2017, retest the prior all-time high, correction 10%, and then upwards and onwards. This one very fast, by the way, very, very fast. Took about a week correction, then new highs. Kind of crazy. Let's go to the one over here. We have this one, and let's see. Test the all-time high, make slightly new all-time high. Sounds kind of familiar, actually. And then big correction. So from the high to the low, this one about a 30 plus percent correction over the course of 1-2 weeks for the low to be put in, then straight up from there, basically. We could even count this one as well, I would say. Although this one doesn't, well, on a closing base, you have a pullback right here. You don't really, and technically speaking, it's not a cycle high anyways. And then we got this one right here. Again, same sort of thing. It's like very slight correction, perhaps, 5%, not much. So we do kind of have like a wide array of corrective percentages from, retesting the all-time high. The one thing that is very consistent among these is that once it tests the all-time high, it makes new highs on the lower end within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I guess. 7 weeks, 6 weeks. I don't know. Do you want to count this as the all-time high test rate? It's technically not, so I wouldn't. I've seen some people do that as well. It's just that's not. I don't think that's honest to do because I don't think it's accurate. Over here, 1 week, like we already did this one over here, but 2 weeks. Anyways, my big point here is that look, as long as Bitcoin is below 66.4, let's call it for today, on the index, okay, have to be defensive towards a further correction. But as you can see, it's already tested the top side right here, the blue range high. I'd expect maybe a short-term pullback, especially if this. Are we getting close? No, we're not even close to profit taking just yet. But realistically, it's all going to come down to that daily closure for me. And again, looking at the 5-day right here, I mean, yes, Bitcoin rejected the 78.6, but 61.8 level is significantly further down at 58. So long term, the trend still stays intact. The question is, does Bitcoin come down again and give another chance for a more obvious higher low? Let's see what CME looks like as well. I didn't check this one. Interesting, hit the 88.3 level perfectly on the high. This one closes tonight. I would say also, I would be very, very biased towards a further correction to the downside. Let's say somewhere around 56 to 57,000 bucks overall on a quick spike. If Bitcoin does close today below 63,000 bucks on CME, very specifically. So those would be my two major things to be watchful of and mindful of for today's daily closure. It's really going to drive, this next sort of portion of the price action. But yeah, long term for me, Bitcoin's very bullish above 56,000 bucks. Below there, it's like, okay, corrections turn into reversals. Fair enough. But yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. As always, I want to wish you the best of the best. These are kind of the more fun times in this portion of the market cycle, at least in my opinion, because it makes things a little bit more, I don't know, interesting, as you actually have to use your brain a little bit, or at least I have to use my brain a little bit. And it's not just straight up, I guess. So fair enough. We'll end things on that note. As always, I want to wish you the best of the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.